Hi, this is Mike making my video to add to my collection. It's 5/1/2025 and it's almost midnight. So anyway, making this video and I'm adding to my collection. Uh, One of the most profound statements I've ever heard was to add to a man's wealth, you don't give him more wealth, you take away from his desires. And I thought that that was actually a very interesting statement. And, I considered my life and the way it is, and, more or less. And, I see that's kind of how I am. As time progresses, my interest in things, I don't have as many interests as I used to. And, as a result of that, I, have more contentment because I don't have as many things that weigh me down as far as things that I desire. Sometimes, when you have a lot of possessions, they possess you. And ultimately, that's kind of sort of how it is. Uh, and I've got nice things, don't get me wrong. And, I've had a lot of miraculous things happen, a lot of synchronicities. And, with all those things put together, and not to mention my education that I've had. And the fact is, I don't chase after women anymore either. And I stay by myself. I don't have many friends. And that tends to be more of a, solitude, basically seems to be more peaceful. So, if you're looking for peace, sometimes that's what you need to do, is don't let your possessions possess you. And of course, there's that, and don't have a lot of payments, and don't have a lot of debt, and don't have a lot of subscriptions, and don't have houses, cars, too many cars. One car is good enough. And basically have it to where you simplify your life, and you cut off all the dead weight, and you burn off all the dross, and all this, you separate the subtle from the gross, and you have a lot of energy, and you be still and you focus. And when you focus on things, your desires come true. But you have to have ambition, of course, and you have to have energy. So I'm not saying it's bad, to take, mind expanding drugs. you know it's just, you don't need to abuse it and have too many. And you know basically just do enough sometimes. And do it every once in a while, like mushrooms or whatever. But be careful with that. It can really blow things up in your face. So when you're ready, of course, try that out. But meditation, it's not what you eat, drink, or wear. It's meditation. I mean, be focused. Be still and listen to that small voice. And listen to your conscience. Sometimes you just need to trust things. And ultimately, things will manifest, and they'll come to fruition, and without much effort. So you don't need to put a lot of effort into things sometimes. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you really need to work at things, and you have to struggle, and you have to try, and you have to keep trying. Um, it's not always the case where uh, you know you just lay on your ass and expect things to happen. You can't be lukewarm. You have to actually try. And even if you're wrong, at least you're trying. And if you're wrong or you're right, you're right. You know, if you think it can be done or it can't be done, you're right. So the way I'm the way I'm trying to say this is, you know, it's just if you think you can do it, you know, do it. And you might surprise yourself by stepping out of your comfort zone. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. So, you know, it's just sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone and do something. Whether, you know, sometimes it might be something small that you're doing, but at least you're doing something. You have to be alert, you have to be attentive, and you have to respond to the signals that the universe is giving you. I mean, I always say the universe, it's really ultimately your mind. Everything is just a manifestation of the mind. The universe is a reflection of what's going on in the inside of you. You know, everything pretty much starts with the mind, and of course, manifests through that uh, tool that you have, your mind. So anyway, you know, basically, I'm talking about, you know, manifestation. You know, basically, it talks about, you know, study that, you know, the 12 universal laws, and you know, you basically keep working at things, and then you keep trying, and you know, you just have desire. You know, you have to have desire, and then of course, if you don't have desire, you know, you can't really achieve anything, you know, of any substance. So, you know, my desire, you know, for women and wine, you know, alcohol, definitely I quit that. And then, of course, wine being knowledge. Sometimes you realize that AI can answer all your questions. You don't have to really go to a university and spend a $500,000 at the end of the game, you know, just to have a piece of paper that says you can get a job. Sometimes employers hire from within and they're not looking for that, you know, people with all these credentials. So anyway, there's that, and then of course, you know, I don't buy cars that much anymore. I used to, but I came to the realization, you know, that most cars, you know, when you buy them used, you just buy somebody else's problems, and a lot of times they have blown head gaskets and whatnot, and you buy them and you flip them and stuff like that. There's a way to make money. I doubled my money in like a year, but it's like you have to have a place to park them, and it's not conducive, you know, to where I live right now, so I don't really do that. And, you know, merchandise I buy, you know, high-end electronics and stuff like that, but, you know, you think about it, people have cell phones and they have all the apps on it. They don't really need to have all these things in their house, all this clutter, and they just have their cell phone or their tablet, maybe their computer, and you know, they simplify things and they don't have as much as they used to. And sometimes that's kind of a relaxing feeling. You know, I don't have girlfriends that require me to take them out to eat and feed them all the time, and I gotta have sex all the time with them and stuff like that. And then of course, you put all that effort into a woman, and sometimes they leave you, and it's not always conducive to be in a relationship. You know, and especially when you're my age. You know, it's like, you know, uh, you know, I'm at the point in life right now where I'll take it when I can get it, but I'm not going to work myself up over it. And like I say, you know, I've got virtual reality. I see women naked on there all the time, and I don't have to have a woman with me all the time. And usually women get bored, and that's kind of the way they are. They complain about things, and they're never happy. You know, it's kind of the way they are. It's not always the case. But, you know, if you're not having kids, there's no point in being married. And there's no point in being in a long-term relationship if you're not going to have a family or kids. It just doesn't work. And anyway, so anyway, yeah, I covered cars, I covered merchandise. A lot of the merchandise has got planned obsolescence, and it fades away. And a woman's beauty fades, and of course, You know, you have it to where you're with the woman sometimes, and you know, you're just not interested in them anymore. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. It's not so much that it's their fault, but you just get to the point where you're not interested. And I just stopped chasing after all that, chasing the dragon and stuff like that, and I stopped chasing after the wind. You know, I don't need a lot of friends. They can just, their hobbies and their requirements of me are too expensive, and they want me to spend money and do this and do that. And really, a lot of times, if they're your friend, the only reason usually they are your friend is because you might have a girlfriend, or you know, you have something that they want and they try to butter you up. So I don't really trust people anymore. And my reality, after I collapse away function and have experienced everything, I see things so much differently than most people. So anyway, there's that. And you know, so there's useless knowledge, there's merchandise, cars. I don't have a house payment. I don't want to have a giant sprawling mansion because, you know, you're throwing your money away. And there's no point in that. And, you know, you're just buying a dinosaur. And you buy a woman, you're buying a lion, and you got to feed it. And you got to, you know, feed it meat and stuff like that. So you're just buying problems. And of course, there's that. And, you know, I don't have fancy hobbies. I don't go out to eat. I don't travel. Uh, you know, I'm just modest in every sense of the word. I cut my own hair, wash my own clothes. I smoke cigarettes out of a bag. I ate food out of a can, you know, food shelf food. And, you know, I don't buy fancy food. And I rarely ever even drink pop. And, you know, just, I don't really crave all the shit I used to. So, I stay away from people, you know, they seem to be problems. Hatch from all those situations that I'm in with people. And, you know, I focus on this, on materializing things, you know, having miracles happen and all that, but that seems to be something that's fading away. It's not so much that, you know, I just don't desire to go through all that trials and tribulations to obtain miracles. It's just chasing after the wind in the end of the day. I like it, you know, but it's just too much, and I pretty much exhausted everything there is to do. There really isn't much more, so I'm just faced with boredom. And being bored is not such a bad thing. You know, it's better than suffering. And, you know, being content with things, that's really true happiness at the end of the day. Just being content. And it's not euphoric. I mean, sometimes I did have euphoria, but that's because I was suffering immensely, and I had relief from that suffering. It was a major thing, and as a major weight was taken off my shoulders, and I experienced things, but that doesn't happen as much anymore. So you got your two minds, and you got all the manifestations of your two minds. You know, you got the inside and the outside, and they're ultimately everything's on the inside, but you have either way you look at it, your two minds pretty much dictate how you perceive things and how things affect you. So I might post this, but I don't know. But like I say, you know, I live a simple life, and it's kind of boring. But there are people that live far simpler lives, and I have lived an incredibly simple life. And it's just not where I'm at. You know, I don't want to live like that at all. You know, I like the idea of having some entertainment. So anyway, that's all I got to say, really, for the most part. So yeah, out of sight, out of mind. You know, as you take your problems away, and then you feel euphoric and blissful and expansive. But then, you know, you bounce back down to an equilibrium where you feel content, and that's actually not a bad thing. You could live happily ever after that way. So